Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast. These are conversations with Grand Valley State University film and video graduates about the industry, the film video major, and alumni profiles.
Welcome to another edition of Alumni Live. My name is Joel Petrikis. I am an assistant professor here at Grand Valley State University, speaking with alum ishkwaazhe Shane McSauby, who is a new visiting faculty member here at Grand Valley as well. How you doing, Shane?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about your time in the film program here at Grand Valley, how you found your way in the industry, if you pursued grad school, how you found your way back to Grand Valley, and then what's your hopes here and in the industry today. So can you just give us a little backstory on where you grew up and how you became interested in filmmaking?
Yeah. So I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I grew up, born and raised here, and I've just always loved film for as long as I can remember. When I was younger, I wanted to be an actor, though. You don't know the process of filmmaking until you get to a certain point. So I wanted to be an actor growing up, but I grew up going to the Ep10 theater, which was like the second run theater. It had $1.25 tickets. So instead of going on vacations or doing other things, we always just went to the movies multiple times a week. I just saw whatever was out and grew up that way. And then my aunt also had this double-decker VCR, and she would just record boxes of tapes, movies. We would just have boxes and boxes of recorded VHSs with 3 or 4 movies on them. If I wasn't at the theater, I was just watching these tapes. I grew up in that way, and I was watching movies all the time and completely obsessed.
Can you think of one at the theater and one on VHS that really stuck with you more than others?
One that sticks out with me in the theaters is honestly, and I was a little older, but Titanic. I saw that one so many times in theaters. It's ridiculous. And it just has everything in it, drama and disaster. And it's just the package of everything. And then for VHS, Terminator 2. I don't remember seeing that one in theaters, but I remember just watching it obsessively on VHS.
So what do you think? Is that like your elementary school, high school, when all this formative viewing is happening?
This would have been in elementary school. Yeah. I remember it actually in the 4th grade. On Mondays, we would come back and sit in a circle and talk about our weekend. And it became a running joke in class where we would get to me, and instead of asking what I did over the weekend, they would just ask what movies I saw over the weekend.
So then you just want to make movies and acting. That's what we see. We don't know what's going on behind the camera or even that there is a camera. So when do you start really taking it seriously? Like, this is what I maybe want to do for the rest of my life. And how do you come to Grand Valley?
In my senior year of high school, they started a class that was like a test run of film and video. We had like mini DV, then they taught us a very little bit about framing, and we edited on Premiere. The final project was you just make a short film. And so mine was this ridiculously long 20-minute short film that was just a ripoff of A Clockwork Orange. It was called A Clockwork Chapter. It had characters from Clockwork Orange, like Droogs, and it was just really long, really bad 10-minute walking scenes. But it was my first time really creatively writing and staging stuff and filming it and being thoughtful. Okay, how do I get this from the paper and get it into what I'm picturing in my mind and get it into the camera? It was so fun. And I remember being like, okay, being behind the camera is actually where I want to be. This is cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Cause I think a lot of young filmmakers are inspired by like big, loud, Titanic-y Terminator kind of stuff. But I've seen some of your work while you're at Grand Valley. I remember Sean Baker said that he went to NYU to make the next Die Hard. And by the time he left, he was just making films about 2 people talking for 10 minutes. When did you start to find your voice and things that were important to you that you wanted to talk about in films?
I don't know, man. I feel like I didn't find my voice. It wasn't until recently that I really found where I want to be as far as that goes. After high school, I grew up just watching the mainstream stuff. The furthest I got was like Kubrick and Scorsese, which was a great place to be. In college, I went to GRCC and took a basic film studies class. And that was the first time where I watched City Lights by Chaplin. And that completely blew my mind because we're like, I don't want to watch a black and white movie. That's boring. That's old. The class was laughing. I was laughing. I was feeling emotion. Like all of the moments were hitting, even though this was in like 34, whatever year. And I just remember being like, wow, this is so powerful. A movie and it's silent. We watch Cinema Paradiso. We watch Casablanca, which is still one of my favorites. I love old Hollywood. We definitely watched Bicycle Thieves, which then introduced me into neorealism and world cinema and art film, which then led me into the New Wave, French New Wave. All of these new forms, all of these new things were just blowing my mind, especially the French New Wave. Once I transferred from GRCC to GVSU, started taking more in-depth film studies classes and just started watching more stuff on my own, like discovering Criterion and just exposing myself to different forms. Like Japanese New Wave is also incredible. I remember the first time watching A Cult Is My Passport, and I was just like, so cool and just so fresh. Like it just remains fresh. And so really then I was like, oh, movies aren't just these Titanics and Terminator 2s and Predators.
Yeah.
There's just a whole literal world out there of ways to make movies. I think as early film students, you get a little pretentious. I don't want to watch that trash anymore. I'm sticking to my Godard. So I got into that for quite a while. And I still love those movies, but that's where I started being like, okay, I think I want to tell something else.
I think having seen your work, you're riding that fine line between your early inspirations like Terminator 2, but also Godard and Truffaut, combining some like, there's blood in your movies. And there's also this artful way to it. So like at Grand Valley, what were the classes that really connected with you as a filmmaker where like you discovered directing or audio or cinematography? Because you're ultimately a director, but all directors know the whole world and know how to write and know how to produce. So what was it that really hooked you and were like, yeah, this is what I want to do? Is it writing or directing? What's your true love? And did you find it at Grand Valley?
It's always been writing and directing. Taking a screenwriting course was great. I remember being very thankful that I was learning how to actually write a screenplay. And that was really exciting. I remember also at that time, the screenwriting professor had worked in Hollywood as like a script doctor, and that was a big deal. But I remember on the first day of class, he was like, who in here wants to be writer directors? And everybody raised their hand. He was like, you'll be lucky if one of you makes it. And I remember being like, damn, what? And it's like, what a jerk. But I felt that as a challenge. And I think about that to this day. When you're in your 20s and you're fresh to filmmaking, I feel like the reason that I'm here, that I'm still pursuing this is because I've had people just being, yes, keep going. You're doing great. And I've been very fortunate to have that. I remember we had Mari Ulrich who taught Fiction 1, and she did this indie film, Alley Cat, that premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival. And at the time, that was a huge deal for us. It's just to have filmmakers in the program. She was so influential. She introduced me to Judith Weston as far as directing actors go, and this whole new way of working with actors and thinking about the craft of acting. One of the most influential people was also Suzanne Zach. Suzanne taught me the fundamentals of everything and just championed us in a way that was really fundamental, I feel like, in me being like, okay, yeah, I can do this. We had John Philbin, who was also fun and taught us how to shoot a film. And yeah, so fiction classes were always my favorite. So I didn't get to direct until my thesis. That was my first time actually directing on my own.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I think a lot of students are in that situation where they don't get an opportunity to direct in maybe a fiction filmmaking class, but the thesis is their chance to really put it out there and make something big and bold. What did you do with that film? Did you really love it and decide to submit it to film festivals, use it as a calling card to find an agent? What happened after that film?
For the thesis at GVSU?
Yeah.
Yeah, so with that, at the time of not getting chosen to direct, I was probably salty. I don't remember any feelings of saltiness, but it was probably there. While I was on set, I gave it my all, but I was also very observational as far as what are these directors doing? What do I like that they're doing? How is it landing on the actors? How is it landing on the DPs? And so I was really observing what they were doing, what I would do differently, what I thought was working, what I thought wasn't. I was just doing my job, but also really focusing on observing. And then with my thesis, I was obsessed with Linklater. I still am today, but...
What's your favorite Linklater?
Before Sunset, second, the middle one of the trilogy.
He's just one of those weird directors who's done so many different genres and styles and tones. And I'm always curious, what are they responding to Linklater? Which version of him
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, I love a lot of his work. But yeah, so I was like, I'm going to do a walk and talk. And man, so it was like 15 minutes long. At the time, I was like, oh man, this is going to get me into Sundance. This is cinema. It was a lot of fun to shoot. I shot it with my friends at GV, Caleb Doughty, who was one of the few others that was really into French New Wave and jazz and black and white movies and smoking cigarettes. And we would just hang out and listen to records and watch New Wave movies. It's very ridiculous, but we got along so well. And it was such a good working relationship. He DP'd that. And then Chris Bartlett, former GV people. But yeah, we made it. It was received well at the showcase, which was great. The professors loved it, which was great. I'm feeling good. And then I get it on Film Freeway and I was like, all right, Sundance. I just put it out. And that was my first time really feeling the taste of extreme rejection. Every big film festival or mid-size, I just got rejected from mostly everywhere. I certainly got into some, but couldn't tell you the names of the festivals. I moved to New York City right after graduating for no reason other than Caleb, the guy I just mentioned, was moving there, and his partner, Tara, was doing her master's program. So they asked me if I wanted to go. So I got it into this tiny film festival called, I don't know, New Filmmakers New York or something. I forget what it's called, but it screams the Anthology Archives. And so I'd moved there and got in and I got to screen my thesis in a really old theater in the Lower East Side, which just felt so cool. The theater was completely empty. It was me and the other filmmakers, and that was it. Maybe like we all had one friend there, but it was so cool regardless. It was like seeing it in a theater out in New York or just outside of GVSU. I was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to get more butts in these seats. It didn't get me anything besides a challenge or the will to keep going and to do something stronger.
Yeah, I know a lot of filmmakers, once they get all those rejection letters, sometimes that just puts a damper on your creative spirit and you start to doubt that. But you moved to New York and you didn't doubt yourself, or maybe you did, I don't know, but you got into the grad program there. So talk about when you decided to apply and what does that feel like when you get that acceptance letter, and just talk a little bit about your time at NYU, which is, I'm sure, much different than it was at Grand Valley.
Yeah. So actually that was 3 years later. I moved to NY just to move there, no plan or anything. Right. And then I want to touch on the self-doubt part because that was always there.
Yeah.
That's still always there.
Yep.
But yeah, I moved to New York. I wrote a script there called Minnow Bimadzwin, and then I submitted it to the Sundance Lab specifically for the Indigenous program. And it was chosen. So they take your script and you go to Santa Fe and you workshop it for a week. The first day you workshop the script. The second day, they hire actors and you work with actors, but you also have a team of advisors who are directors who work in the industry, and you test shoot a scene and then you edit it and then you screen it and get feedback. But all throughout, you have these directors behind you giving advice and walking you through the process. 2 of them were NYU professors. And through that, they were asking me questions that I just never had ever thought about, like questions as far as story, character, and motivations, and just basic things that we think about now. But at that time, I was like, oh, these are good questions. What does your character want in the scene? What are they doing in the scene? After that workshop of just intense 12-hour days, just thinking about the script, thinking about the scene nonstop, I realized that I had so much still to learn. Like, I came out of GVSU hot thinking, all right, I'm going to do these things. And then I went there, did the workshop, and I was like, shit, I don't know anything. That's just how much there is of filmmaking and storytelling.
Yeah, that's what Kurosawa said when he got his honorary Oscar at age 80. He's like, I still have so much to learn. Like, that is very true, man.
Yeah.
So that lab, is it true that they don't want you to actually work on the actual script during that lab?
I don't think we actually did work on the script in the lab.
So you have this amazing chance at the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, and then they workshop your script, and then you filmed that.
Yeah. So then they give you a grant to make it. It was $25,000, which at that time I was like, I have no idea what to do.
How to even spend that money properly.
Yeah. And so I was like, all right, New York I'm just working all the time. I'm not getting anything. It's depressing and expensive. And so I was like, I'm moving back home. I'm going to make these movies. I moved back to Grand Rapids to focus on the film because it takes place there. This was in 2017. We shot it and released it. So then I brought on some people. It was a really great shoot. I was like, okay, I got this Sundance finance film, feel really good about it, submitted to Sundance Film Festival and got rejected. And I was devastated.
Yeah, they foster your script and give you money to make it and then say it's not good enough or better luck next time, pal. That's got to be really confusing, if nothing else.
Yeah, it was. Really took it hard. Luckily, the native program, they told me before I got the generic Sundance rejection, but they talked to me over the phone. So it wasn't as hard, but it's still devastating. All throughout GVSU and school, I was like, I've always hated school all my life. I'm never going back. I'm out and in the real world. But if I ever went to grad school, it would be NYU because that's where Scorsese and Spike Lee went. Like I said, I had 2 NYU professors at my lab, called them up, talked more about grad school and NYU specifically. There was 2 weeks before the deadline for grad school. I hadn't thought about it until I got that rejection from Sundance. And then I was just like, I got to do this. I thought I was a complete failure, which isn't true. I need to learn everything I can now. That's why I applied to grad school. And that was in 2018 that I went. I was very lucky in that those 2 people I met were at NYU.
How long was that program scheduled to be?
It's a 3 to 4 year program.
And then COVID kind of interrupted some of that, right? So what was your time like at NYU?
It was incredible. You take 2 semesters worth of classes every semester. So it's double the class load that you have. You're there from 9 a.m. until around 5. And then you're always working on a project. So you have one big project that you work on for the semester, and every class is garnered towards that end project. You take a producing class, a directing class, a writing class, a directing the actors class, editing, cinematography, aesthetics, film viewing, some random ones sprinkled in there like film safety. That's the first year. And then you get directing exercises every week. You have to cast and shoot directing exercises. They start off very simple and then they get more complex as you go, but it's like go shoot an establishing shot from 2 different ways of a location that tells us character of the location or something like that. And then it gets much more specific and you're doing it with cast and stuff. So you're there for 12 hours a day at NYU, just thinking about film nonstop. And it's the most intense time of my life. It's really like film boot camp.
That lasts for 4 years. So it all kind of culminates similar to Grand Valley in a thesis film, right?
Yeah. So before my thesis, I made a short called Happy Thanksgiving. And that's the second year film. And you focus on 1 10-minute short for the entire year. And then you get 3 months off at the middle of the year to shoot. You have to work on everybody's and it's like rotating and stuff. And then you edit it and you screen it in front of professors and you get ripped apart in front of your class and you continue to edit it. But my film, Happy Thanksgiving, was shot on film, had all these locations. It was in Grand Rapids, produced from New York, and had a food fight, like a very complicated script. Lots of scenes, lots of characters, lots of things happening. It was hell. It was really the hardest shoot that I've ever had.
Just because the logistics, I know you were shooting on 16, but also just that many locations and characters.
Yeah, logistics. The weather was really bad. We happened to have just a lot of weather-related incidences. A tree fell on one of the trailers and ripped it up. WKTV's trailer. All these cars got stuck in mud. It was like natural disasters all around. Film disasters, just everything that could go wrong did. And then COVID happened in the middle of the editing process and I got very depressed, stopped working completely. I wasn't happy with how the movie was coming along. I was like, again, I'm a failure. And so I stopped and I was like, I'm done. I'm putting this away. I'm going to go travel. I don't know if I'll come back to filmmaking.
Wow.
I did. It was like me and my partner drove around the country and traveled around. I went to like some activist protest camps. Just got out and didn't think about movies at all. And then I was like, you know what? So many people worked so hard on this that I have to finish this. I have to finish it at least for the actors and the crew. So I did and was received really well by my class and by the NYU community. So I was like, okay, I need to do this again. I need to do something. And so for my thesis, this time I'm going to learn from my mistakes. I'm going to make one with 2 characters. That's it. And just really test how am I going to direct 2 people in one location and keep it interesting. So that was the idea of my thesis.
And that was The Beguiling, right?
Yeah.
So you make The Beguiling, and I know this is, as far as my understanding of the Shane McSauby story, where things really start to happen as far as industry attention. and maybe even caught you off guard with how quickly this one took off and got well received. What is that editing process like as you're putting it together? Because that is like the worst feeling when you're editing something and you're just not seeing the magic that was there on the page and on set. So is the beguiling like more of a confidence builder as you're filming it and as you're editing it? And then what do you do with it once you finish it to get the attention?
Yeah. So making it was a huge confidence booster because it was honestly one of the best sets I've ever had. We really prepped for it. We shot it in my apartment back in Brooklyn and it just came along so nicely. We had such a good crew. It was really such a lovely time. And then editing it, is always a journey. And I brought out an editor this time instead of doing it myself. I built it to a certain point, passed it off to an editor.
Yeah.
Then we really worked together to do it. And it took a long time to get to a place that I was happy. I was aiming for a TIFF deadline.
TIFF being the Toronto International Film Festival.
Yes, Toronto International Film Festival, which is, big. And I was being very ambitious, I think.
Yeah, that's a top 5 film festival in the world.
Yeah, I was like, I'm really happy with this. I think it's got potential. So I submitted a rough cut, temporary score, temporary color. I got the notification that I was accepted and going to be screening. And then I thought it was a mistake. Signed the paperwork as quick as I could, and it's like, okay, contractually obligated to allow me to continue on. But so screen at TIFF, we hired a publicist that my partner knew. My partner also produced it. So we had a plan going into TIFF because I've heard of people getting into big festivals and it goes nowhere. So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I want to get the most out of it. I had meetings a lot while I was there. And one of those meetings was with a management company, Entertainment 360. We met a number of times just over the phone and that continued after TIFF. We decided to work together.
And during this time, you had been hired as an adjunct professor in the winter of 24. And then this semester, we are in the fall of 24, you were brought on as a visiting professor. So how have you found managing your teaching load while also trying to be relevant in the industry and do your own thing? Are you able to find that balance? And is it like beneficial to your filmmaking? Are they like feeding off each other?
Definitely feeding off of each other. I would say the first semester I taught, the winter semester, was really hard as far as finding the balance. I really just put all of my energy into the semester, and multiple people tell me like, it takes some time, but you'll find the balance and you have to make that. I find that this semester I'm finding more balance, but it definitely feeds off each other. It's really helpful and inspiring. I feel like to be in these creative spaces, to be talking about story, to see people start to get it or start to put it into practice. I feed off of that. To see younger people explore and want to be creative. It really makes you want to be on top of your stuff as far as the filmmaker goes.
I'm a Grand Valley alum too, and going back to what you learned on Happy Thanksgiving is something that I continue to learn. And one of the things that I brought to Grand Valley right away was, let me help you get your vision on film, but also let's try to reduce the stress levels. I tell them in my Fiction 1 class, we're going to keep it a maximum of 2 locations and a maximum of 4 characters. I feel like that really helps them rein in their idea and find their focus and make it manageable and realistic on a 2-day shoot. Are there any things that you learned that you didn't get at Grand Valley? You didn't have someone say, hey, Shane, keep the locations to 1 or 2 and the characters to 2 or 3 to make this manageable. Is there anything that you learned since your time at Grand Valley that you're now bringing to your students in your classes?
Keeping things simple, really just trying to bring stuff down and really focus in on the moment.
Yeah.
I think it's just natural to want to go big when you're young. It's usually what you're watching at that stage was like big grand things. And one of the things for writing specifically is don't focus on plot. You have the plot, but once you get in there, it's like we watch movies for characters. NYU is a very character-driven storytelling place. That's what sticks out to us is like, what is the character doing? If you focus too much on the plot and the theme, it's really easy to sort of get lost and confused in the plot and in the theme. So really focus on just what your character's doing, give them an objective and figure out what they're doing and what's preventing them from doing that. And then how do they feel about what they're doing as well? And it'll fall in place. Spending all this time developing a voice as a filmmaker, now I feel like I need to develop my voice as a professor. What can I bring that's new and fresh? I mean, it's inherently ingrained in how I teach because it's just my understanding. I think it's every day and every week is learning like, okay, this didn't work, so let's try something else. It's a lot of play and there's a lot of fresh stuff to play with, which is exciting.
Yeah, I didn't learn the thing about avoiding plot until really late in life when I was getting my teeth cleaned. and the dental hygienist was asking me what I do. And then I got into that small talk while somebody's got a pick in your mouth. And she just kept talking. She goes, well, I guess that's why we go to the movies, right? Just to feel something. And I kind of dismissed it for a minute. And then I was like, oh my gosh, she just blew my mind. We don't feel anything. What's the point of this? So rely on those characters and emotions, man. Right now, you are still touring around festivals with The Beguiling. I assume the next step probably is developing your first feature, maybe. Like, what's the goal for the next year or two?
So I have 2 features that I'm developing right now and trying to get those off the ground as we continue on the festival circuit, using those spaces to get some excitement around these features. And then I'm just really trying to work on my writing routine.
Yeah. With our final thought here, I'm sure students listening to this or anybody listening to this aspiring to be a filmmaker is they always like, what is there one piece of advice? And I remember for me, it was actually when I was at Grand Valley, I had had a lot of classes with Kim Roberts and John Philbin, and I made my thesis film. It was this music video and it was really like slick and looked great. And it almost could play on MTV. And I was really excited about it. And Kim Roberts was a big supporter of me. Like I was this weird experimental art house kind of guy. And I showed her that thesis feeling so excited. All she said was, it's great. It just doesn't feel like you. And I was like, whoa, for about half an hour, I was like, whatever, Kim, you don't know nothing, man. And then I was like, man, she is so right. And it's like the one thing daily I remind myself, yeah, this is good, but is this me? That is so crucial to me as a filmmaker and a professor. Like somebody else teaches it this way, but this is me. What can you leave our listeners with? The one thing that stuck with you or hopefully will stick with future filmmakers?
I have 2 things. One is that this is a journey and filmmaking is a marathon, not a sprint. There's not even necessarily an end point. Know that this is a really long process and it takes people a really long time to get off the ground. But when you're in your 20s, that's when you're figuring out who you are. And so the way you do that is to explore life, focus on living, which is corny, but true, And then as you're exploring living, explore filming, be experimental, take risks, make mistakes. That's the only way that you'll find your voice. I feel like I didn't find mine until recently in my 30s, where I was like, I feel confident in who I am as a person. But you're always still searching. I think when you accept the fact that there's no sort of end point in life, there's one, I guess, but there's no point at which you just get it and everything falls into place.
Yeah.
And once you understand that everybody's just trying to figure it out and you can apply that to filmmaking or whatever it is that you're passionate about and that you're doing, it frees you from your expectations and you can just be in the process of doing and making. It takes time to get there, but as you keep that in mind, keep making and keep exploring and messing up and don't take failure or rejections to heart. It's all part of the process.
Yeah, I'm with you. It took me about 15 years. I didn't find my voice till I was about 32. And it just took 15 years of making and failing and little successes and little failures until I kind of like found that moment. It's a big deal. You can only get there by putting in your 10,000 hours, as they say. Well, thanks, Shane. It was great talking to you. It's great to have you on campus. We'll catch up in the hallways. But until then, track down Shane's work. Where can we find some of this work, Shane?
Some of it is on Vimeo. I have a website, ishkwaazhe.com. I think it's linked on there. Otherwise, I always feel pretentious saying this, but you can Google my name and my Vimeo comes up.
You totally can. You played TIFF, man. You're famous now.
I have no comment.
All right.
But thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
See you guys.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast to hear more from our alumni across the industry. Check out Alumni Live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more conversations and networking. Let us know what topics you want to hear our alumni talk about. The Grand Valley State University Film Video Alumni Network is here for you, and we're glad that you're here. Thank you for listening.